she's a partner, a chief campaign officer, and executive director for Purpose Labs. She has spent over 18 years building people-powered movements from climate change to voting rights. And Jessy, I know that you are also working with Ingka on its collaboration. Hey, Jessy, with young leaders. So before you start the session, could you also tell us a little bit more about that, and also how that work is tying into this session?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me here at OHOP again this year. I have to say that I have been so inspired by the conversation and the collaboration that we've all been a part of these past few days. So I'm going to reiterate what a lot of people have said so far. These are indeed crazy, unparalleled times that we are living through. There's a couple of different ways to kind of look at this moment that we're living through. One, you could say we have crisis, we have polarization, we have governments, trying to figure out solutions to huge problems. We have people living with intense uncertainty. And you could also look at the world right now and you could say communities are coming together. The desire for big solutions to big problems is forcing collaboration unlike anything we've ever seen before. So in this moment, in this unprecedented series of challenges, where the issues of sustainability and equity and our economy are all merging together, it really begs the question, how do we bring all the right voices together to ensure that we're having the most dynamic, most innovative, most big thinking conversation humanly possible? And our proposition, and by our, I mean my proposition, the proposition of a bunch of remarkable young leaders, as well as Ingka, is to really ensure that we're creating the stage for a dynamic intergenerational conversation. What now feels like a very long time ago, September of 2019, IKEA, along with Unilever and a set of other corporate brands, began a really important endeavor, which was coming together to create a series of conversations between corporate CEOs and some of the most remarkable youth activists around the planet. Coming out of that first conversation, Jesper and many of the young leaders that were in the room in New York last September felt that there was real opportunity to keep that conversation going. And so this past January, we were really proud to launch the inaugural session of a group of young leaders kind of serving in it as an advisory grouping for IKEA around the world. And we started in the US with the CEO of IKEA US and 9 dynamic leaders on a very cold January afternoon, really talking about how can the power and the inspiration of a rising youth movement come together with a renewed commitment from IKEA and corporate leaders around the world to really embark on bold solutions to sustainability. Yesterday, after a remarkable day in our sessions at OHOP, we continued that dialogue. We expanded that group of young leaders to convene with some of Ingka's leadership from across the globe and talk about what does this moment mean for us? How can we bring our conviction, our will, our different capabilities, our heart and intention of the youth movement together with our resources and reach of the corporation together? And so today I'm really excited to be continuing that conversation for the benefit of all of our OHOP participants, to bridge this gap of generations, but also to bridge this gap of perspectives, and really understand how it's together 2 generations experiencing these completely unprecedented times that can pave the way for some truly bold collaboration moving forward. And with that, I'm excited to introduce one of these absolutely remarkable young leaders. Rebecca Marmot is the Chief Sustainability Officer of Unilever. And she's responsible for driving transformational change within Unilever's sustainable living plan. And we're really excited to have Rebecca with us today so that she has the opportunity to be in conversation with one of our remarkable young leaders, Melati, who we'll introduce in just a second. Rebecca, how are you doing today?
Well, I'm fine. I was excited to be introduced as a young leader. It's great. I'm really excited to be part of this conversation. I know that yesterday you had some really, really thought-provoking and brilliant conversations. So hopefully that will carry on today. So thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And here's the thing. I myself am a recovering young leader. I got my start at the forefront of the youth climate movement. Dare I share this news with this entire audience, but I'm pushing 40 and I still have the heart and spirit of a young leader. So young is a state of mind, and this is about bringing all of the generations together today. So before we get to you, Rebecca, I'm just going to ask you to hang tight for 1 second. I want to introduce the amazing, world-renowned, I might add, Melati Wijsen. Melati is an 18-year-old Indonesian Dutch activist and change maker. She graduated from Bali's super cool green school in 2017. I might add a year early, and she's been a full-time change maker ever since. But let's be clear, this is not a new era of work for Melati. Melati, at the age of 12, founded Bye Bye Plastic with her younger sister. Which led to an official ban of plastic bags and styrofoam, which was enforced by the Balinese government as a result of your incredible advocacy. And of course, you didn't stop there because you've now launched the new youth empowerment project, Youthtopia. And it's pretty remarkable the amount that you have done in this short amount of time. I'm completely inspired, but instead of me continuing to tell your story, Melati, I want to welcome you. I want to thank you for giving us part of your time today. And I want you to start by just talking to us a little bit about this epic journey of advocacy you've been on. And also, what do you think of this moment that we're in right now?
Thank you so much. I really admired your kickoff. I thought it was, oftentimes that passion and that energy is so hard to translate virtually. So I think you got me here at 9 p.m. in Bali, Indonesia, where I'm tuning in live from. I'm awake, I am ready, and I'm super excited to be part of the dialogue today. I think the importance of intergenerational collaboration and space is so important as well. I started at 12 years old, like you mentioned. It's been a whirlwind. It's a massive roller coaster of 7 years now at the front lines. I learned so much. I don't think a single textbook or lesson at a traditional school could ever teach me the life lessons that I learned firsthand. And, unfortunately, I have to admit as well that even though the time that we're living in right now with the pandemic, the global crises that we feel and that we see, that we experience, from the forest fires, the floods, the climate crisis, I also have to admit that I'm a little bit excited. I'm finally feeling like we're at the point of no return. There is no normal. We can't go back to normal. And so at this point, either we make it or we don't. And I think that there's a really exciting potential that we're sitting on, and that I hope all of us as individuals, no matter what level of society we're on, we're taking that full potential and that opportunity that's being presented to us right now.
I absolutely love that. I absolutely love it. In a minute, I'm going to turn back to Rebecca to get her take on this. But let's just say for a second, Melati, that you are the Chief Sustainability Officer at Unilever. Let's just say, I don't think that would be far off from a potential path for you in the future. When you say we make it or we don't, and I just have to I have to offer my own opinion. I agree. We're in the moment. We make it or we don't. What do you want to see folks like Rebecca doing in this moment? How can Unilever kind of meet that moment that you're describing?
Okay, Rebecca, I hope that you have a pen and paper in hand, because I do have a list. But keep it brief. There are 4 points, maybe 5. I think the first one is really celebrate and communicate the small changes that are being implemented throughout Unilever with the customers. More bigger and more louder. We're not following the progress nor the goals that you're having at the moment. Second thing, as these small changes take place and as you celebrate them, you have to accelerate this change throughout the whole production line. You're going too slow, Unilever. You can do much better. The third thing, invest in the redesign process of the products. Sachets here in Indonesia, it's the #1 thing we're finding on the cleanups. Redesign the product. And so dig deep into those pockets and invest into the redesign process. And then last but not least, I think there's a huge opportunity here for companies and industries like Unilever to empower those that already have the innovation. Invite them in, empower them, and scale their solutions because it's already out there. So yeah, that would be sort of my key takeaways of how I would think Unilever can take action.
This is why I am feeling incredibly positive and inspired by the future, because when posed a question like that, our young leaders across this world have answers. Now, Rebecca, I'm sorry to put you on the spot a little bit. We started yesterday to hear from Alan a bit about Unilever's efforts. And I've been lucky enough to work with Unilever, so I know that you all have a lot up your sleeves and have really been out there being leaders on the forefront. Could you talk to us a little bit about what's happening in the realm of sustainability and also how you might respond to some of Melati's ideas?
Well, thank you. So firstly, Melati, I love your energy, and I love the way that you've not just talked about things, but you've actually set about and you've done things. And I love the work that you did with Bye Bye Plastic Bag. I think it was absolutely brilliant. So thank you, because I think we need everybody to galvanize action to get things done. So I say on the 4 points, and then I'll talk a little bit about some of the work that we've been doing. I couldn't agree more actually about moving forward with what has been a horrendous 6 months for everybody around the world because of COVID. If something good could come out of it, I think it is this increasing talk about this reset, this reinvention, and certainly putting a green recovery at the heart of trying to help communities and countries get back on track. And certainly a number of the stimulus packages, particularly in Europe, but I've seen around the world as well, are putting that green recovery right at the heart of getting the economy back on their feet. And of course, inextricably linked into the fight against climate change is also making sure that we protect people's livelihoods. So when we look at some of the economic stimulus packages and the job creation in these new green recovery areas, I agree with Melati. I think there is something to be hopeful about through what has been a period that has been incredibly dark and unprecedented for all of us. So, I agree very much there. I think in terms of your 4 areas, Melati, celebrating and communicating is absolutely critical. I think people want to know what companies are actually doing to step up and to make a difference. And I'll talk in a second about some of the work that we launched about 6 weeks ago with the new Climate and Nature Plan. And in fact, just yesterday with what we're calling our Clean Future Plan. And I think in terms of accelerating through the production line, again, I couldn't agree more. I think as a big business, one of the things that we need to do is really to take a 4-stage process, which is what we do at Unilever. It's getting our own house in order. So making sure, for example, when we come to climate change, that we have implemented across our own organisation the right policies and the right approaches to make sure that we're practicing what we're talking about. So, for example, we moved to clean energy across all of Unilever's sites last year. And not only was that good for business, there was a strong business case behind doing that. It saved us nearly €1 billion. It's, of course, the right thing for us to be able to do to lead the way. Then the second stage of that is through our value chain. So from the sourcing of the crops and commodities, so thinking about the farmers in the field, right the way through to the production of the products themselves, the distribution of those products, and the retailers who are in many cases selling those products into the consumers, and then into what we can do in wider society. So that might mean putting the messages around what we're doing through sustainability. So, for example, talking about through brands like Dove, the role of self-esteem in young girls. It might be about Ben & Jerry's, who are talking about climate change through their brands, using the power of our brands in a really transformational way to get those messages across. And then lastly, in what we can do in wider society, which is why I'm really excited to be here today. We do a lot of work with groups like IKEA. We're not in the same line of business, but when we work together across the business world, you can tackle some of these big systemic issues. So, for example, we've made a pledge around zero deforestation in our own supply chain by 2023. But what we really want to see is other people coming on board. So bringing in lots of other businesses so that collectively we can make a much bigger difference. I think in terms of what we've actually been doing at Unilever itself, I mentioned we launched back in June a new climate and nature strategy. So what we wanted to do was to really ensure that we were making our own stance towards climate change. So we said we wanted to ensure net zero carbon emissions for all of our products from cradle to shelf by 2039. We want to halve the GHG impacts of our products across the life cycle by 2030, and really aim to make all of our product formulations biodegradable also by 2030. I've talked a little bit already about what we were doing on deforestation-free supply chains by 2023. And then I mentioned one of the big things I believe that we can do is use the power of our brands, exactly like Melati said, communicate to your consumers, communicate to your stakeholders about what you're doing. So we've pledged €1 billion fund, which I'm really excited about. We're in the process of launching that at the moment, to bring to life a lot of these messages around climate and nature through the work that we're doing with our brands. So, for example, Knorr, which is Unilever's largest food brand, embarked on a programme called Future 50 last year in partnership with the WWF, which is around trying to move away from us all, the world, eating the same kind of food types the whole time. So really an over-reliance then on the same crops and commodities, which of course isn't so good for people's health, but also puts a lot of strain on the sourcing of those crops and commodities. And from a biodiversity perspective, it clearly doesn't make sense. So trying to encourage, together with WWF, people to eat different kinds of food. So we identified 50 what we call future foods, which are only not just good for the planet, so more plant-based, different types of fruits and vegetables, but also good for health, and looking at how we can bring those kind of messages to life in a really mass market way. And then yesterday, some of you may have seen, we launched a new program called Clean Future, which is something that is particularly focused on Unilever's home care business. So thinking about laundry detergents, around surface cleaners, around toilet cleaners, etc. And really, to Melati's point, what this aims to do is looking at actually the sustainability of our products when it comes to how we do the formulations. So we want to move away from using fossil fuel derived chemicals in all the formulations to using renewable and recycled sources of carbon. So a really cool and exciting departure. So high carbon chemistry to low carbon products, which will be really effective. So still able to get the same high results, but washing your clothes in cold water, or if we're using a machine, being able to put them onto the quick wash cycle. So I think when you take that sustainability lens and you put it right the way across your operations, as I said, your own house, your extended value chain, through the brands, and then what you can do in wider society, and you apply that sustainability lens across your portfolio of products, it can be hugely exciting. And I think for us at Unilever, it's what we're trying to do, both with the work that we're doing on climate and on nature and on protecting water, but also when we think about livelihoods and putting, for example, I mentioned the work we talked about on nature, putting farmers at the centre of that work. So thinking about making sure that farmers, their livelihoods are protected. They're the guardians of the land for all of us, and making sure that we work with farmers to help them to come up with more sustainable approaches to how they're doing their cultivation. So a raft of different things that we're doing, but I'd love to hear from Melati and others, Melati, who you're working with on those kinds of ideas.
Rebecca, thank you so much. It is always a good sign when I'm being told by the organizers we may be running out of time because there's so much to report on in terms of the initiatives. I think that is the type of momentum that we need in this moment. It certainly, in my mind, is the pace and the scale and the robustness of activity we need to see if we're really going to make the most of the moment. Melati, I just thought I'd give you just a minute or two to quickly respond to some of what you heard and some of what makes you excited in terms of things you may even look to collaborate on with Unilever. And then we'll see if we have some questions from our audience.
Sure. Well, thank you very much for giving the opportunity to kind of digest and learn as well. I think, as to your point, you know, there's a lot of progress happening from a lot of different companies, a lot of different industries. And I feel like the communication, the transparency of that progress is so important. And I think, Rebecca, it's a good start. But I also have to say that I think we can do better. We have to set the bar higher. We have to be bolder in our ideas, because 2030, that's a sounds far. I'll be celebrating my 30th birthday. And before then, I know we can achieve more tangible change and more tangible solutions that are already out there. So I'll definitely take you up on that offer, and perhaps we can collaborate on a more long-term, on the grounds. Indonesia is one of the largest sources of marine plastic pollution as well. So it's our reality here on the ground. So I'll be more than happy to collaborate and see what we can do as a youth movement to help push, accelerate, hold accountable Unilever to make sure we're getting those goals reached a lot sooner than 2030.
So actually, well, Melati, you are 100% right. But I should add, actually, I didn't even get a chance to talk about what we're doing on plastics. And you'll be pleased to know that those commitments are by 2025, we're going to halve our use of virgin plastic, which is more than 100,000 tons. And then crucially, collect and process more plastic packaging than we sell, because a whole other area that I know we've not had time to discuss today is not just the environmental impact, but also the impact on livelihoods as well. And again, using that approach that I talked about at the beginning, working with people like Ellen MacArthur Foundation and the CGF on the systems change work. But absolutely would love to talk to you further about it. I know you've done some brilliant programs already in Indonesia on plastics.
Perfect.
I love it. There is nothing like seeing a group of powerful women talking about going bigger, faster, further, and the collective vision and accountability. And I can see real, true commitment that this isn't optional, that this is absolutely essential to building the future we want to build. Daniela, I'd love to go to you to see if we have any questions to pose to our panelists.
Hey, Jessy and Melati and Rebecca. Great to see you. We actually have quite a lot of action going on and a lot of questions coming in. One is on the plastics for you, Rebecca. Could you give us some examples of the actions that Unilever are doing at the same time to reduce the use of plastics?
So yeah, I talked just a second ago about some of the commitments that we've made. So again, when we look at plastic, we've tried to take very much a holistic approach. So thinking about not only the production, but also the collection. So really it falls into a number of different areas. We said that we wanted to halve the use of virgin plastic by 2025. So that means not only thinking about solutions to the packaging from a purely practical perspective and shifting to using PCR from using virgin plastic, but actually thinking in a very different way. So thinking about how, from a consumer goods perspective, can we actually come up with new approaches? So actually, maybe we don't have packaging at all. Maybe it's thinking about having what we will call naked packaging. Maybe it's thinking about delivering the same kind of innovations that our consumers want and need, but in a way that doesn't rely on plastic in any way at all. Thinking about how can we help collect and process more plastic packaging than we sell. So we said that we would commit to that, and we are committing to that by 2025. So really that's thinking about how do we make sure that we work within the ecosystems that already exist in a number of countries to really try and drive consumer awareness around the importance of recyclability, making sure that we're working at a very local level, but also, of course, influencing and working with governments at national level to set up the right kind of recycling infrastructure. So putting them in place and actually thinking about how do we work across the board, so with other businesses, with governments, with NGOs, to really try and drive systems change. Because what we want to make sure is that actually the whole approach to recycling, reduction and reuse is taken at every single point along the plastic cycle.
Thank you for that, Rebecca. Jessy, we have a couple of more. Do you want to go or shall I?
I'm going to come back to you, Daniela.
Oh,
if that's
good.
Okay.
Then go.
Because there's another voice that I want to bring into the conversation, if you don't mind. So I am really excited to bring in Juvencio, who is the Chief Financial Officer for Ingka. And I'm so excited to introduce Juvencio because this is the person in Ingka who is responsible for how we combine profit and purpose together, right? This is what the heart of the matter is all about. Juvencio, you have played many roles in Ingka. You led IKEA India, you've worked in Spain, and you've worked in Portugal. And if I know anything, I know that when you hold the title of Chief Financial Officer, that really is where the rubber hits the road. And so we are really excited to jump into a conversation in a minute on how you are able, for this great company, to both hold the bottom line of what a company needs to do, which is to generate profit, but also make sure that IKEA is serving that larger purpose. Now, I do want to mention before we jump into the conversation that we hoped today to have one of our amazing members of our Young Leaders Advisory Group, Jerome Foster, joining us. Jerome is a remarkable, internationally renowned environmental activist and co-founder of Million of Us. He's also starting his very first year of college, and there's a lot going on right now. We may have had some challenges getting him to join this morning, but I'm going to do my best to bring some of his fighting spirit to this conversation. Yesterday, as we convened with young leaders from around the world, and they were responding to what this moment feels like, you know, some of the themes that we heard from Jerome and from his peers were a concern about how we were going to navigate the simultaneous challenges of the climate crisis that's growing nearer, of recovering from the COVID crisis, of recognizing that around the world we have a reckoning with race and equality underway. And in hearing that concern and the urgency of these amazing young activists, the questions they were posing is, how can a company like IKEA, and how is a company like IKEA meeting this intensity of the moment? So Juvencio, I'm going to turn over to you to reflect a little bit on how you're able to meet the intensity of this moment, the need for IKEA to be showing up with great purpose, and how you do that from both the confines and opportunities that a global business offers.
Hey, thank you very much. With energy like Melati is given to us, I think we have no choice but keep investing in the future for the good of the coming generations. I think you mentioned about this dilemma between purpose and profit, and this is exactly the point. It cannot be a dilemma, because the moment we already think it's a dilemma, we will create a fighting among us. IKEA is born in this type of dilemmas. And the reality is that you need to find a way forward. So that's, for me, it's important that we companies do things. It's even more important that these things are integrated into the business model. But it's even more important that all these activities in sustainability are giving us a profit for the consumers, profit for the society, profit for the planet, and also profit for the company, because if these resources are only possible when we can make a sustainable business. So I think the key thing is the combination of both and not a dilemma any longer. If I take some examples, because I think the best thing is to have proof points to illustrate what I say. For example from our offer, from the IKEA offer. You have, for example, the home solar. Home solar that we provide to the consumers is good for the planet, that's for sure. It's good for us as a business. We make money out of that, but it's even good for the consumers because they can save up to 400 euros every year in electricity bill. So it's win-win-win in all dimensions. Or for example, the new plant-based bowl that we have launched recently. We are famous by the meat bowl. We also have the plant-based bowl, which is basically it's a healthy food, but also it's good price, but also it's a good seller, but also it's 94% less of the carbon footprint of a traditional meat bowl. This is another example. Or another example is Nixhul, which is a lamp that is a LED lamp that is made of bamboo, from disregarded bamboo from the weavers in Vietnam. So these are examples of win-win-win. If you take, for example, in the investments area, we do quite significant investments every year. And then we are investing a lot in renewable. And this is giving us good returns, more than a traditional bonds that we can get as a financial investment. And it's, of course, creating good impact into the planet. More than 100% of the energy we consume is today produced by wind or by solar. Or, for example, investment that we do in our own buildings, in the retrofitting of our own buildings, is a payback of less than 10 years for electricity, heating, and cooling from renewable. So that is what I try to say. It's a way it's embedded into the business. Or finally, in the people side. In the people side, we are today at 50-50 in gender equality. And in less than 2 years, we have committed by 2022 no pay gap in between genders, but also all the diversity and inclusion. All these things are proving better performance in business. So diversity, gender equality, inclusion, it's equal to better business performance. So this is, for me, the key thing, as I mentioned before. The sustainability agenda is not only about doing things around the business. It has to be integrated into the business, and it has to create profit for everybody. That's what I say. Purpose and profit is not a dilemma.
I love it. And I love this framing of win-win-win, because we have no choice anymore, right? We can't set up future generations. And I know if Jerome were on this call, he would look you in the eye and he would say, that all sounds incredible. We're talking about no pay gap. We're talking about solar energy. We're talking about changing the food system, right? He would say, that's incredible. And he would say, the future of my generation is hanging in the balance. So I thank you for all of that. And I want you to do more, and I want you to go further. And I want my movement to be able to help you.
Maybe we could go to Rebecca and hear what your advice would be to the OHOP audience about working with the value chain partners to accelerate the impact.
So I would say one of the big learnings that we had from Unilever's Sustainable Living Plan, which was the 10-year framework that Unilever launched in 2010 that ran through till 2020, which really underpinned the first big raft of our sustainability commitments. We had 3 big pillars in that, and nearly 100 very time-bound specific things that related to sustainability right the way across our brands and across the whole of the value chain. And one of the big learnings from it was, if we didn't work with partners, we wouldn't be able to achieve the kinds of change that we needed. So if I give you a couple of examples of the different sorts of partners that we had, a big aim for Unilever was to do a lot more around what we call the WASH agenda, water, sanitation and hygiene, because we have a lot of expertise in that area around getting people to wash their hands or practice good sanitation, drink clean water. And so when we looked at the most impactful way for us to make a difference, we realized that we had to work with a whole host of different partners across the value chain. So that meant, from an advocacy perspective, thinking about working with UN partners. So in the run-up to the Sustainable Development Goals being launched in 2015, we did a lot of work with groups like UNICEF, with NGOs like WaterAid, to look at getting a very integrated approach to water, sanitation and hygiene when the SDGs were launched. We then looked at who would be the best partners for us to work with on the ground. So to Melati's point, to really make sure that we were delivering programs that would make a difference. So we've worked with UNICEF over the past 6 years and reached now 25 million people around the world with sanitation programs. So encouraging people to adopt good sanitation practices around the use of a toilet and keeping a toilet clean and hygienic, because you know that it's integral in terms of family safety. It's also very important in a school environment to make sure that girls have a toilet that they're able to go to separate to boys when they're in school. And then we think about working with our marketing and communications teams to bring all of that to life through the advertising and through the wider reach that we have in the community through the work that we're doing with our brands. So I think when you think about working with partners, it's important to think about the advocacy partners, the partners who are going to implement the programs on the ground. We've done a lot of work at government level, for example, in India with Prime Minister Modi and the very ambitious targets that he set for India as a country around having access to a toilet. So I think always trying to bear in mind those different kinds of partners. And then in response to the question you had earlier around the business case of doing that, I think always making sure that that's underpinned by a very strong business case, so that you know then by nature that those programs are going to be sustainable and they're built in not just as a CSR initiative, but built into the long-term planning for the way that the brand or the way that the company is continuing to work.
And as I think we have the sound of Juvencio now, I would love to go back to the question that you had, Jessy, that was also asked by the participants, which is, how does IKEA tap into the youth movement?
I think it's when you hear a Melati, you cannot escape, but you get more energy to keep going. We are partnering with the youth in different parts of the world. Last year, for example, we have done a lot of things on that as well. But also we are partnering with young companies as well. We are partnering with innovative companies led by young people who are really helping us to accelerate the transformation of the business in our mainly in circularity and in our climate positive agenda. And we have a great example of startups and venture growth capital that are actually helping us to transform.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I'm going to pass it back to you now, Jessy.
Great. Thank you so much, Daniela. Of course, we're running out of time and there's so much more to say, but I just want to note something a little bit funny. In this era of everything on Zoom and everything on Microsoft Hangouts, one of the most often things we say is, "Can you hear me? Can you hear me?" I think one of the things we should be most proud of from this conversation is that we have some of the biggest brands in the entire world who are hearing, who are listening, and thankfully we have remarkable young activists on the front lines of this fight who are making sure that their voices are heard, that the needs of the planet, of our communities, of our global world are heard and met. And there is endless possibility when we bring together the innovation of companies like IKEA and companies like Unilever and the spirit and commitment of young leaders like Melati. So let me deeply thank Melati and Juvencio and Rebecca for their time today. Let me also thank IKEA for the incredible commitment over these past 6 months, and I know a commitment for the many years to come to remain in dialogue with youth leaders and in collaboration with youth leaders, and to the entire OHOP community that's here with us today. Let's search for ways to bring together the potential of lots of generations to usher in an absolutely historic wave of change across the planet. Thank you so much, everybody, and enjoy the rest of the day.
And thank you so much to you also, Jessy, for moderating this panel.